Hey, Gary, how are things?
Things are great, but I crushed my mortgage payment with Owning without even leaving my couch. I got a refi at a great low rate, and Owning did it all in less than 3 weeks. It was easy, no muss, no fuss.
Be like Gary. Call Owning at 833-2-OWNING and crush your mortgage payment with today's 30-year fixed refi at 2.5% rate, 2.731% APR. That's right, 30-year fixed at 2.5% rate, 2.731% APR.
Owning Corporation, licensed by the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act, NMLS 1797976. Guaranteed Rate, Inc., NMLS 2611. Call 833-852-6464 for more information, subject to credit approval.
You can crush it too with a 30-year fixed, 2.5% rate, 2.731 APR.
Call 833-2-OWNING or log on to owning.com. That's 833-2-OWNING or log on to owning.com.
Is eating fish healthy? Certainly not for the fish, and most definitely not for the oceans. That's the reason the Sarno brothers, founding chefs at Good Catch Foods, began perfecting 100% plant-based seafood. They wanted sustainable options that are respectful of all creatures and don't harm our oceans. Ask your grocer for Good Catch Foods like tuna and crab cakes, or shop online at goodcatchfoods.com. Then, host your own Fishless Friday and feel good about every bite.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. What's going on, everybody? So today we have a relatively long article, so we're going to jump right into it. This is an article from the New Republic, and the author is Jacob Silverman. The headline, Letting Jeffrey Epstein's Pals Off the Hook. Look, we know that Jeffrey Epstein and his friends were protected for decades. We know that they were protected by some of the most powerful people, not only in the United States, but around the world. And we also know that it is an absolute travesty that none of these people have been put in bracelets and perp walked yet. It looks like the New Republic feels the same way. So let's check out what they have to say. This we know. On August 10th, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein, a prolific pedophile and the most high-profile prisoner in America, died early in the morning in his prison cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in downtown Manhattan. His death was described in official reports as a suicide, the first to occur in decades at the MCC, where conditions could best be described as squalid. This is what I was talking about the other day. Don't let them gaslight you into thinking that the MCC is this place where people are committing suicide on a regular basis. That is just not founded by facts. That's BS, honestly. Is the place a hellhole? Yes. Are the conditions pretty shitty? Yes. Are people hanging themselves and killing themselves in a huge clip? No. But if you let the media tell it and you would let the official narrative speak about it, they would have you thinking that there were mass hangings happening inside of the MCC on a regular basis, which is so far away from the truth. Practically the rest of the Epstein story remains in dispute, though some impressive investigative reporting and courageous survivor testimony have brought much needed clarity. And I say this all the time, without the investigative journalists who dug into this case, without the content creators and the people, the sleuths on the internet, we would be nowhere near where we are today. It has nothing to do with the prosecution. They haven't done shit. What have they released to the public to help us out with our search and our investigation? Nothing, right? And that's not their job. It's not their job to release anything. But the fact of the matter is this. This has been going on for decades, okay? And I understand a RICO case takes years to build. You have had years. This is not like people are yelling from the rooftops about RICO and you just arrested the man last July. Then I can understand, all right, the gears of justice are grinding. We understand how it works, blah, blah, blah. But no, this is decades old. So you're not going to be able to use that excuse, oh, we're still building our case. That's BS. The case is already built. What we see here is a lack of motivation. With seemingly endless cash and connections, Epstein had spent decades abusing young girls with impunity, save for a sweetheart deal his lawyers secretly negotiated with the federal government in 2007. And again, we know that backstory, right? We know that Alan Dershowitz, high profile Mr. I kept my underpants on Dershowitz, walked into that room and finessed these prosecutors. These prosecutors know they don't want to tangle with Alan Dershowitz, and they also understand that Jeffrey Epstein is protected from on high. So when you have the deck stacked against you the way these survivors did from the very beginning, how do you expect them ever to get justice? And still, to this day, if we weren't in such an uproar over this, if the public wasn't so fired up about this, if the survivors didn't come forward so bravely, we wouldn't even be where we are right now. They would continue to cover this up. They would continue to talk trash about the survivors. They would continue to try and destroy their reputations. And that, my friends, is why Krista Marks refuses to release the grand jury documentation, because she understands the egg on the face will be enormous. Without Julie K. Brown's reporting in the Miami Herald, published in 2018 as a series called Perversion of Justice, Epstein might never have been arrested for the final time at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey on July 6, 2019. And what we see from the Julie K. Brown pieces, it puts the pressure on prosecutors to do something when there is a public outcry. When they realize that the public sentiment is going against where they're moving, well, they go into the mode to self-preservation mode, right? All they care about is furthering their career. What, you don't think Berman has aspirations on a higher office? These people don't just become prosecutors and then, oh yeah, that's it. I'll just say as a junior prosecutor or as the prosecutor of the SDNY, and then that's it. I don't have any other goals. Most of these people have aspirations of becoming politicians at some point. Or if you're a judge, a lot of these people want to end up on the Supreme Court, right? So when you have that kind of situation with somebody like Berman, there's always ulterior motives. And when the pressure from the people starts, that's when these disgusting people kick into gear, right? That's when the federal authorities finally decide it's time to do their job. The year since Epstein's arrest has spawned a raft of reportage, podcasts, feverish Reddit threads, books, and documentaries. Recent entries include Netflix Jeffrey Epstein, Filthy Rich, produced by James Patterson, who previously wrote a book about Epstein, and A Convenient Death, The Mysterious Demise of Jeffrey Epstein, an investigatory book by journalists Ilana Goodman and Daniel Halper. So we know that the Netflix documentary used its large platform and its mega reach to suck people into the story, right? And now, once people get sucked into the story, well, they need more information. So they start looking for podcasts, they start looking for books, they start looking for articles, whatever it may be. And there is no shortage of that at this point, folks. There is a ton of information out there. But what I will say to you, if you're new to the case, be very, very careful what sources you're using and who you're reading and listening to. And because, of course, you have to be careful of disinformation and people who are not motivated by the right reasons, right? The Netflix special, spread over 4 episodes, contains painfully revealing interviews with some of Epstein's many survivors. But there's an obvious conflict of interest at the heart of the project. Patterson, who has a house in the exceedingly wealthy town of Palm Beach, Florida, as did Epstein, is a friend and literary collaborator of Bill Clinton, who for a time was a friend and traveling companion of Epstein's. In a 2-year period, Clinton flew on Epstein's jet 26 times. The connection raises the question of whether the Netflix documentary, while valuable for its centering of survivor testimony, is a whitewashing of the upper crust social order that protected the millionaire pedophile and allegedly partook in his human trafficking ring, which furnished hundreds or even thousands of teenage girls for the enjoyment of Epstein and his associates. Well, I don't really know if the Netflix documentary could be said to whitewash the Clinton situation because they really didn't delve too deep into any of that, right? So if we're going to say that it whitewashed the Clinton situation, then we have to say the same thing about Trump. But again, I don't think that was what Netflix was looking to do. I think Netflix was looking to amplify the voice of the survivors and provide an entryway, an entrance point for people to get involved in the broader case at large. With a few exceptions, A Convenient Death is about as up to the moment as the sluggish book publishing industry might allow. A product of two conservative journalists, it's not shy about indicting the liberal media's complicity when it comes to burnishing the Epstein myth. He's a demon now, but for years publications like New York Magazine reported on Epstein as a mysterious financial savant. And there's no doubt about that, right? The media certainly portrayed Epstein as this incredible financier, this man of mystery, this almost Gatsby-like figure. Meanwhile, people knew exactly what was going on, and if you don't think these so-called journalists knew, you're crazy. You think a guy like George Stephanopoulos has no idea what's going on with Jeffrey Epstein? Oh, he knew, and he didn't care. Point blank, period. A guy like George Stephanopoulos does not care one lick about these survivors. If he did, he would not have been at Jeffrey Epstein's house for the party for Prince Andrew after Jeffrey Epstein was committed of his crimes. It also considers Bill Clinton's close association with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, who played the role of Epstein's sexual partner, madam, and fixer. It misses it all right there. How about just co-conspirator? That sums it up perfectly. According to the authors, Maxwell likely carried on a sexual relationship with Bill Clinton in the early 2000s. So we have heard those reports from these authors. I have heard them elsewhere. And look, it doesn't shock me, and I wouldn't be surprised. We know that Bill Clinton has a problem keeping it in his pants. We know that Bill Clinton is a womanizer. And we know from several sources that Bill Clinton is not the most moral man in the world, huh? So why would anyone think that he wouldn't be carrying on an affair with Ghislaine Maxwell, especially if he thinks that could move the needle in his favor when it comes to donations or favors from Epstein? She also became close friends with Chelsea Clinton, and that's just weird too, right? So, this is your dad's gumad, and she's friends with your daughter? It's just so weird. The absolute disrespect Bill Clinton shows to Hillary Clinton on a regular basis is just, I don't even understand. How could she stay with this guy? In 2009, Maxwell, whose current whereabouts are unknown, was served a subpoena in an Epstein-related lawsuit while attending a Clinton Global Initiative conference devoted to human trafficking, a subject she likely knew much about. That embarrassment didn't stop her from attending Chelsea Clinton's wedding the next year, nor from attending later CGI Clinton Global Initiative events. So, she was served a subpoena in the Epstein-related lawsuit while she was at a conference put together by the Clinton Global Initiative, mind you, that was devoted to human trafficking. How often have we seen this? How often have they thrown it right in our faces what they're doing? How brazen could they be? And we allowed it. These disgusting people, these half-stepping, weak-ass prosecutors allowed it. And people like Bill Clinton acted as a vehicle and as supreme enablers for not only Jeffrey Epstein, but for the rest of his criminal organization. Still, despite casting an accusing glance at Clinton, A Convenient Death fails to consider the full scope of Epstein's crimes and his alleged accomplices, some of whom are mentioned only in passing in the Netflix special. Again, there's a reason for that, right? In my opinion, with the 4 hours that was slotted to them, they can only tell so much of the story. So they chose to amplify the survivor's voice and to give you a little bit of a jump-off point. Taken together, the documentary series and the book tell us more about who Epstein was and his diabolical crimes, but they only gesture at the powerful networks of money, political power, and social privilege that helped sustain Epstein's world. And that is where shows like this come in and the Prince and the Pervert podcast come in. We fill in the gaps, right? We fill in the gaps for you. For those of you who are just listening, who might not have been following the story too closely, you've probably watched the Filthy Rich documentary and now you find yourself digging for more information. Well, you are in luck. You have come to the right place. The numerous inconsistencies surrounding Jeffrey Epstein's death could fill its own book. There's another documentary series available online about that subject, and a lot of powerful people had reason to want him dead. Epstein was friends with presidents, princes, billionaires, and famous scientists, lawyers, and journalists, and sometimes told others that he had dirt on these people. Not only did he tell others, we've heard from credible sources like Virginia Roberts, Maria Farmer, and others that this man had the whole entire place cameraed up, wired up, ready to go, so that he can compile these dossiers and in turn control the people who were in his orbit. All of his houses were reportedly wired for surveillance. 2 of his survivors recall being shown a kind of security room with banks of monitors showing live feeds from throughout Epstein's mansion. And if you've ever been into a surveillance room in a business, you know what it looks like, right? You have all of the TVs everywhere, you have the switchboard, and then you have the little area where you can sit and monitor what's going on throughout the whole entire area that's wired up. Over many years, Epstein received at least 3 massages a day from girls who were often lured with the promise that they would receive $200 for performing a massage. Invariably, Epstein turned the massages into assaults. The girls were then offered more money if they brought in a friend to replace them. And that was all part of it, right? Whenever you came over to Jeffrey Epstein's, if you ever engaged in any sort of sexual activity while on one of Jeffrey Epstein's properties, you shouldn't be sleeping too well at night, okay? Because the time is coming where questions are going to be answered. Friends recount being toured through rooms and having cameras pointed out to them. This was a blackmail scheme, says Virginia Roberts, one of Epstein's survivors in Filthy Rich. And there's no doubt, from all of the evidence that's been compiled, from everything that we've seen, everything that we've heard, everything that has just been put out there, this is so much more than just a trafficking ring. So much more than that. This man, he wasn't trafficking to make money. He didn't need to traffic people to make money. The whole reason, besides his own disgusting proclivities, was this was a vehicle for them to compile dossiers and to grab information on powerful people who were within Epstein's orbit. And once he had them under his thumb, once he had them on tape with underage girls, well, there was no limit to the extortion. Because guess what, folks? You can survive an affair. You can survive even stealing, perhaps, but you will never, ever be able to survive a scandal that involves children. Where the blackmail material is now is one of the many unknowns of the Epstein case. Though the FBI is reported to have recovered nude photographs, many of them underage girls and some possibly of male Epstein associates when it raided Epstein's Manhattan home. We've heard that as well. We've heard that there are a treasure trove of pictures and DVDs, etc., etc. But yet we've heard nothing about them. We've seen nothing. There's not even been a leak. Nothing like that at all. There's some crude psychologizing in a convenient death. To say that Epstein had contempt for women, as one friend suggests, citing Epstein's high school nebbishness, seems obvious enough. The authors speculate that Epstein might have been gay. He had a rumored relationship with the retail magnate Les Wexner in the 1980s, and some in Wexner's circle called Epstein the boyfriend. During one deposition, which appears in the documentary, Epstein was asked if he was bisexual. He balked at the question. And there's definitely been a lot of rumors, right? Tons of rumors that Les Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein might have had a little thing going on. And I can't confirm those rumors one way or the other. I'm not too sure. I haven't seen it, in writing. But I will say that credible sources have said that this is the case. So you could do with that what you will. but it would explain a little bit more if Wexner was, say, infatuated with Epstein, perhaps, of why he would give him that power of attorney. But again, just speculation on my part. I have no inside information about the sexuality of either man. I'm not, I didn't know them personally. But there certainly are persistent rumors that lean that way. The founder and former chairman of L Brands, which includes stores like The Limited and Victoria's Secret, Wexner was Epstein's longtime friend and key enabler. A serial liar and cunning manipulator, Epstein sometimes approached women claiming to be a talent scout for Victoria's Secret. We know that he definitely used that as a way to bring girls into his orbit, as the carrot to dangle in front of them. And we know that there's zero chance Wexner had no idea what was going on. Wexner was in complete control of this company for over 60 years. If you think this man was stupid or he didn't have any idea what was occurring, well, you're being very, very naive. Because at the end of the day, there is zero chance that Wexner was not complicit in this. There is zero chance that Wexner does not hold some of the responsibility for what occurred on his New Albany property with Maria. He said he was a money manager for billionaires, but Wexner was his only confirmed client. After meeting Epstein in the mid-1980s, Wexner eventually gave him power of attorney, allowing him full control over Wexner's billions. The source of most of Epstein's own fortune, estimated at nearly $600 million at the time of his death, remains mostly unknown, but much of it appears to have come from Wexner himself, including mansions in Ohio and New York that Wexner essentially gifted to Epstein. And, there's several different paths to go down here, right? When it comes to their relationship, we could talk about it could have been an infatuation type thing, but also it is definitely a spycraft thing. And I think Wexner had a big role to play within this whole entire group. I don't know exactly where he lands, but to think that he had no idea what was going on, to think that he wasn't involved in some capacity, there's just zero chance, in my opinion, that that's the case. According to transaction records, it appears that Epstein also used his position as Wexner's fiduciary to offload huge chunks of Wexner-owned stock while skimming millions for himself. Wexner eventually disavowed Epstein, claiming he stole $46 million from him, a relatively small amount compared to the overall sum Epstein likely earned through the relationship. And does it shock anybody that Epstein was skimming money off the top? The dude basically is a mobster. He operated as if he was a mobster, so he's definitely going to be in on the rake, right? Definitely making sure he gets his fingers, his beak a little bit wet before anybody else. Let me take a few million off the top. Oh, hey. Folks, there is so much money laundering going on here. There are so many financial crimes that occurred on a daily basis with these people, and yet the only two people who were arrested so far are the lowly jailhouse guards who are being made scapegoats. Epstein's associations extended widely, and friends gave liberally both to Epstein charities and his pet causes at Harvard and MIT. Leon Black, the chairman of Apollo Capital, gave Epstein $10 million. Bill Gates, who called Epstein's lifestyle kind of intriguing, allegedly gave the MIT Media Lab $2 million at Epstein's direction. And Leon Black and Bill Gates have both tried to distance themselves from Epstein. Meanwhile, we know the score. We know that Bill Gates and Jeffrey Epstein were homies. And we definitely know that Leon Black and Jeffrey Epstein were homies. And I don't mean in a professional manner. We're talking about personal relationships. These people were very close with each other, and it was not just business, okay? You don't give this kind of money out just because. The list of eminences who dined with Epstein, flew on his plane, went to his island, and stayed at his mansions is an absurd compendium of the rich and powerful. Some have been accused by name of abusing and raping girls procured by Epstein's operation. Nearly all of these people, among the most well-resourced people on the planet, claim innocence and ignorance. And again, folks, it's nice to see in this article them getting called out this way. This is the kind of article that we need more of, where these people are being held to account and nobody's buying their narrative and they're being laid bare. The fact of the matter is, These people are the most well-resourced people on the planet. They have some of the most powerful people around them, and yet they claim ignorance about this situation? Nobody believes you. They simply had no idea that they were associating with perhaps the most prolific sex trafficker of our time. The mysterious flows of money, houses filled with surveillance equipment, walls adorned with photos of underage girls, massage tables in every room, young girls constantly coming and going. Everyone looked the other way. You hear that? Everyone, okay? This is a broad indictment of anybody who enabled Jeffrey Epstein. Anybody who acted as a conduit for him to be involved with so-called polite society. This is a black eye to all of you. Law enforcement has its own failures to account for here. Someone tipped off Epstein when his Palm Beach mansion was going to be raided by police, and computer hard drives subsequently disappeared. So you mean to tell me the federal government can find a terrorist in a cave in Tora Bora and drop a cruise missile from 80,000 feet in the air, or whatever kind of missile from 80,000 feet in the air, and hit their target within an inch? But these people, the feds, have no idea where the hard drives subsequently disappeared to? Furthermore, how were any of these hard drives able to be accessed by these people? Why weren't every single one of these houses raided at the same exact time? What is it that the federal government is hiding? Alex Acosta, who was later appointed labor secretary by Epstein's one-time friend Donald Trump, bears responsibility for cutting the unprecedentedly lenient plea deal in 2007 that not only immunized Epstein against further prosecution, but also covered all of his co-conspirators, named and unnamed, for any crimes committed in the past or even in the future. Folks, how can you not look at this and not be enraged? How can somebody like Krista Marks not open those documents for public scrutiny at this point? Unnamed co-conspirators? How is that even possible that unnamed co-conspirators are protected in this immunity deal? It is absolutely mind-blowing that that's occurring. It's absolutely mind-blowing that in the United States of America, a deal like this would ever be cut with a super predator like Jeffrey Epstein. And again, all of the blame cannot be put at Acosta's feet. Acosta was just another useful idiot. Goes up the chain. Mukasey, etc. All right? It was a stunning giveaway, one that broke the hearts of survivors and their advocates. Acosta later explained in a remark that he might regret that he was told that Epstein belonged to intelligence. And that is 100% what he said. There's no taking that back. There's no erasing it. Acosta himself came out and said that Epstein belonged to intelligence, and that was why the plea deal was what it was. Put an underline under that, because that's the statement of the year. That right there tells you everything you need to know. That brings us to the ultimate question hovering over the Epstein saga, one that's difficult to address because it bleeds so easily into the conspiratorial. What was it all for? And I think it's easy to say, oh, it bleeds into into conspiracy theories because it's so crazy. It's so crazy that it defies reality almost that this occurred. So, of course, people are going to think right away, well, come on, this is crazy. This has to be a conspiracy. But when you really dig, when you really get going, and you start to shake the trees and kick the bushes, what you find is a story that, while it defies reality, is telling of where we are as a society and where the people who are in control of our society have taken us. Victim testimony describes the Epstein trafficking network as being much more than a vehicle for one man's perverse sexual enjoyment. Many others partook. The stench of blackmail hangs over the whole enterprise. Alex Acosta seemed to believe that Epstein, who had foreign passports under different names and was friends with former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, worked for an intelligence agency. We all think that now. Anyone who has been digging into this case, it's pretty much a confirmed fact at this point that Epstein was connected to intelligence, and so was Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell's father, Robert Maxwell, was widely believed to be an Israeli spy. Even Epstein's first job as a teacher at the prestigious Dalton School, which allowed him to make the connections to transition into banking, was facilitated by Donald Barr, a former Office of Strategic Services officer and father of current Attorney General William Barr. Boy, the ties that bind, huh? I think it's pretty clear how I feel about William Barr at this point, but, how many coincidences are they going to want us to swallow down? These connections make it less surprising that Barr has slow-played the investigation into Epstein's death and issued contradictory statements about seeing video now claimed to be lost from outside the cell where Epstein died. Absolutely 100% right. Barr has done nothing but dog-walked us through this whole entire thing. He's attempted to gaslight, he's attempted to lie, and what he has not done, he has not shed any light on what truly occurred that night. All he has done is told us, this is what happened, you better accept my narrative, or you're a conspiracy theorist, basically. And that is unacceptable from the highest law officer in the land. We demand transparency, and we demand accountability of those in power and those at the Justice Department. As it is, Epstein's larger circle of collaborators remains either unknown, unrepentant, or unpunished. Along with Maxwell, Filthy Rich names 3 other women who helped procure girls for Epstein's sexual molestation pyramid scheme. None of them have been arrested. Notable associates like Jean-Luc Brunel, a French model scout and multiple accused rapist, have somehow disappeared. And that's a name we don't talk nearly enough about anymore, is Jean-Luc Brunel. He's been lost in the mix here. But the question remains, where is Jean-Luc Brunel? Why has he not been swooped up by authorities yet? You don't think he has something to offer in the case here? Maxwell somehow is still on the lam. None of the numerous people on the Epstein payroll seem to have been charged with the crime. And while the New York Times has reported on Epstein's supposedly more legitimate businesses, ventures in data mining, genetic research, and finance scattered from New Mexico to the Virgin Islands, no one has emerged to claim they ever worked at these places. That's because it was a big pyramid scheme, just a big money laundering, money washing operation. That is where I'm at. That is exactly what I think, and that is where the evidence has led me. If there's evidence to the contrary, please let me know. Provide it to me so I can see it and change my opinion. But for my money, from where I'm sitting, this is one of the not only biggest trafficking operations, but one of the hugest money laundering operations we've seen in quite some time. We don't need to know what happened to know we've probably been lied to. Goodman and Halper, right? But from where will the truth emerge and who is qualified to tell it? Perhaps a dogged reporter like Julie Brown will write the definitive Epstein book. But for now, observers are left to piece together sources and to occasionally indulge in wild speculation. As Goodman and Halper put it, who would you believe to tell you what happened? The elite, the press, our political leaders, or law enforcement? These are the institutions every American has been told since childhood to trust. But these are the very same institutions that shielded Jeffrey Epstein for years. Folks, that just explains in a nutshell what I'm doing here on this podcast. I was tired of being lied to, I was tired of being deceived, and I was tired of not getting the truth. So, I decided to take it upon myself and start digging into the case to find out just exactly what occurred. And what you have witnessed unfold here on this podcast since October is that research basically done in real time. And they're right. None of these institutions can be trusted. From the federal government down to the local municipalities, none of these people have our best interest at heart. All they care about is the consolidation of power. And that is where we are. And not only in the United States, but around the world, folks. We are in a very, very, very wild time to be alive. And the upheaval, in my opinion, is just starting. And when people start to really understand what's going on behind the scenes, behind the curtain, well, I don't think they'll be looting and rioting in cities and destroying stores. I think they'll be heading to banks and they'll be heading to the Capitol buildings, because once the curtain is drawn back and everything is laid bare for the people to see, they're going to be disgusted by what has been going on at the very top of the pyramid scheme for basically since the beginning. They're right. The Epstein story in many ways is representative of the larger institutional rot that afflicts our politics. It's about different rules for the rich, governmental incompetence, and outright corruption. It's about decadent elites operating an enormous criminal enterprise with impunity, trading money, bodies, and influence at will, with no concern for who they hurt. Sounds like this guy's been listening to the podcast, perhaps, huh? Because that's the two-tier justice system right there for you, folks. One set of rules for them, and one set of rules for us. We are not invited to their great party, okay? You are not part of their crew. You are not part of their group. And you will never be. Alan Dershowitz, Epstein's former lawyer and friend, who seems to accept every interview request he receives, despite the fact that he has also been accused of rape by one of Epstein's survivors, told the authors of A Convenient Death that Epstein went to his death believing himself innocent without regrets. That's one more reason to think that Epstein didn't kill himself, and to remind ourselves that whatever kind of monster Epstein was, he was not alone. And that is the whole entire point of what we're doing, folks. That is why all of us, me, you, and everybody else involved, is spending the time and sitting down and spending resources to get to the bottom of this. Because Jeffrey Epstein, he didn't act alone. And those people that helped Jeffrey Epstein during this whole entire reign of terror, well, they have not been punished yet. And until the day that justice is served, the full court press will remain on. If you'd like to contact me, you could do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. And for those of you asking about the GoFundMe, well, I reactivated it, and yeah, you can donate there if you'd like to. I'll leave the link in the description box. All right, everybody, I'll be back later on with some more. I hope you all have a fantastic day.
For confidence in your financial plan, look for a CFP professional. When your financial advisor earns the CFP certification, it means he or she is trained to provide ethical financial planning across a holistic range of topics, from retirement and investing to taxes and estate planning, all in your best interest. So, with a CFP professional, you'll feel confident in your financial plan today and tomorrow. 3 letters do make a difference. Visit letsmakeaplan.org to find your CFP professional.
Hey, Gary, how are things?
Things are great, but I crushed my mortgage payment with owning without even leaving my couch. I got a refi at a great low rate, and owning did it all in less than 3 weeks. It was easy, no muss, no fuss.
Be like Gary. Call Owning at 833-2-OWNING and crush your mortgage payment with today's 30-year fixed refi at 2.5% rate, 2.731% APR. That's right, 30-year fixed at 2.5% rate, 2.731% APR.
Owning Corporation, licensed by the Department of Financial Protection and Innovation under the California Residential Mortgage Lending Act, NMLS 1797976. Guaranteed Rate Inc., NMLS 2611. Call 833-852-6464 for more information, subject to credit approval.
You can crush it too with a 30-year fixed, 2.5% rate, 2.731 APR.
Call 833-2-OWNING or log on to owning.com. That's 833-2-OWNING or log on to owning.com.